Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Cry Wolf event, in which the Warg Spirit is added to the game. So, this week brings the final of the Polearm Doom weapon, specifically of the green variety. This, of course, is the Doom weapon that was kind of like the Journey troops before they were nerfed, but not quite exactly the same, where they have a double hit, they create a bunch of gems of a given color, and if there's more of that team, or more of that color on your team and on the enemy team, you'll end up creating even more of that color. Overall, a really great weapon type that's still kind of niche, but in the kind of situations where you would end up using it is sometimes your best damage source, so it does come into play, can still be brought out for a lot of various things, and yeah, we finally got the last one of them, so now we officially have it for every single color. The only big downside of this, I guess, is that, well, of course, we're not getting more of them, which means we are moving on to the next Doom weapon type coming up in the near future. That's seeming like it's going to be some kind of new shield, which will hopefully be better, because the life-gaining Doom weapon is horrifically bad, notoriously one of the worst there is. So hopefully this is going to be some kind of new armor one, or whatever it's going to do. Hopefully the shields will be at least half decent. Beyond that, we have a new mythic coming out this Friday, and we actually have the event calendar for the entire month. So we kind of know everything that's going to be happening in the near future. Like this week, we already see the Tower of Doom, the faction event this weekend, so on and so forth. Of course, the new Friday, this mythic. But as far as notable things coming out throughout the month, we have the International Cat Day coming out on, or the International Cat Pet Day, whatever you want to call it. the cat for International Cat Day, not specifically on this date, but the date that we get the pet is this 7th. So we'll be getting that. And the one for International Dog Day is on the 28th. Beyond that, we're also going to be having a fox-like event that we'll be getting even another pet, another legend, all the stuff we normally have with one of those events, the golden variant, all those kind of things. So 4 different pets, almost 1 per week, essentially, what we'll be getting this month. Beyond that, mostly just normal stuff. Other noteworthy thing, I guess, is the transfer over of the campaign, which is happening pretty soon. I'm not sure why it says June 10th, because that should be, I believe, the 12th? Or 19th, whenever the current event is, because we're on week 8 right now, so whatever, 4 weeks. Yeah, that would be a while. Why does it say that date then? Okay, anyways. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Anyways. And then, of course, the other noteworthy thing, we got ourselves a Vault Event weekend. Vault Event weekend is happening on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, so if you want to go and grind out a ton of resources, that would be the time to do so, which is not this weekend, but the following weekend, so right around the corner. That's pretty much everything. And I'll have a little link to it in the description if you want to go and reference it yourself in the future. Beyond that, I did mention the Mythic. I might as well mention it now. I was going to mention it a little bit later, but might as well do it right now. So this is new Mythic. We'll be covering a video on him on Friday when it comes out. And he looks interesting. Of course, subject to change by then, but likely to be pretty similar to this. The Pharaoh Kafru. Why must they make all words hard? But this is a Kedar undead troop, which is kind of expected from Kedar. It is a 24 mana cost, purple, yellow, brown, and it does the following. It converts all gems of a chosen color to cursed gems. So you, cursed gems are brown, so you're basically converting to brown. It's basically apothecary in that regard. So you're converting everything to brown. Almost inverse apothecary. I didn't think about that till just now. But it's basically just inverse apothecary. Apothecary does it for 10 mana cost. However, she is green-blue, which means you can synergize it with this if you wanted to, with no mana conflict. However, it's kind of the inverse, because apothecary for 10 mana does cleanse all allies. Whereas this, of course, will effectively curse all enemies, though it could also curse your own team ultimately. But, of course, most notably will curse all enemies. It converts 3 skulls to Deathmark gems, which don't count as anything, but, of course, if you end up destroying them, you can get 3 additional Deathmarks onto the enemy team that's already cursed. And then also converts all other skulls that aren't those 3 into Uberdoom skulls, meaning if you mass destroy, not only will you end up getting a 3 Deathmark onto the opposing team, but you'll also end up getting the extra 10 damage for every single Uberdoom skull. So that has some interesting implications, as you would, of course, want to always use him to convert into an extra turn. And one thing that this does, compared to Apothecary, is he, of course, does use brown while creating brown, meaning even though he has more than double the mana cost of Apothecary, he does get a lot of his mana back from actually casting his ability, where, of course, Apothecary gains none back. It can feed into something else that will feed it mana back, but it does not itself gain any mana from casting. So this will be interesting to see if you actually could end up gaining enough. Generally speaking, most converters can't get that high, but, you know, combined with the billion other things that we have that can do free mana accumulation these days, shouldn't be that hard to end up doing. And speaking of mana accumulation, if you happen to end your turn and you still have some of these effects on the board, you do have a way to clear it with him. He has something kind of similar to the Cinder Mirage troops in that he explodes, or, you know, that those explode 1 gem. However, this explodes 2 gems, so he explodes 2 gems when his turn begins. Compared to current means of mana accumulation, this isn't that great. There's already a ton of troops that can explode for 1. There's already things that can mass explode turn 1 like Leprechaun. We're starting to get things that can just mass mana accumulate turn 1, like the Ember Claw, as well as Takshaka, obviously, and similar things that create like 2 of a color. So doing 2 explodes, it's not awful. It's just very limiting as to when this would actually be optimal. But it does have some interesting implications as your main curse option. So if you want to use this as a curse option on any of these colors, particularly a pure brown team particularly, but it could be any of these, it does have a lot of potential to be good. But I don't know, we'll have to wait till Friday, kind of mess around with him, see what he can end up doing. But he's definitely going to be on the above side for Mythics. He's probably not going to be like the strongest thing in the world, but he's definitely going to be way above average for the average Mythic. So it'll be interesting to see what we can end up ultimately doing with him once we have the chance to mess with him more. Anyways, as far as current event, Warg Spirit is what we end up getting. You can get it for 200 glory each when you stock up on Arcane Venom Trait Stones. As far as the troop itself, it deals a bunch of damage to an enemy, boosted by Ghost Gems, and then creates 3 Ghost Gems. Similar to basically every Ghost Gem mechanic we've been getting this season so far, it is useless, unfortunately. Well, not completely useless, but you know, it will come into Arena, I guess, here and there. But beyond that, you are pretty much never putting this onto your team. Similar to every Ghost Gem mechanic troop we've gotten so far, it just doesn't do enough to justify putting it onto your team. You're not going to be using this on a soul farming team. You're not going to be using this in a pure soul team. There just isn't really a use case that you're going to bring it out. Has the Haunted trait like a lot of these been getting, and has a little bit of green link, but nothing particularly noteworthy to ever make it stand out and actually usable on a team unless you are really down bad in a given game mode and just mostly using it for its mana link more so than anything. Anyways, beyond that, other things we have going on this week, we have ourselves a Tower of Doom. With the Tower of Doom, of course, report back to your guild where all the better rooms are. That's not how you get there. Report back to your guild through any means you wish to report back what all of the better rooms are. You basically want to get all the way to floor 26, as in 25th completion. This will end up giving you the maximum amount of loot as you get a extra scroll from the rewards. So every single time you move up through the tiers here, you end up getting an extra scroll that you can end up using to upgrade your troops. This one right here, the Nature Forge scroll. So you get 25 extra those for clearing through all this floor, so definitely make sure to do so. Only do the rooms that are actually worthwhile, things like Fireball, Heroism, Unlocks, and similar. As anything else, if you're just taking like an extra +1 armor boost or anything like that, every single battle counts as a sigil. So you generally want to minimize sigil use as much as possible and only go for the more enticing rooms. Beyond that, same reward system as per usual, with the only really noteworthy thing is if you spend 500 gems into the mode, of course, you get the final of the Doomed Polearms, which for whatever reason is from Broken Spire. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be this way. Most of these in the past, not all of them, though I could have sworn a good majority of them, if not all, were associated with whatever the kingdom was. So a little bit weird that this is Broken Spire. Not only that, why on earth is green Broken Spire? But it's a little bit weird that isn't Magrim Woods or, you know, a more green kingdom. As, yeah, we can't end up using it for Underworld this week, or Underspire. We also can't end up using it for synergy within Broken Spire, because what on earth are you doing for green synergy in Broken Spire? Like, there's a few there, but it's definitely not a green-focused kingdom, so it's just a really weird place to be putting it compared to current event week like Magrim Woods, or, you know, literally anywhere that uses any amount of green to any effect. If I'm not mistaken, I think that place even has a thing that, like, denies all green for the board, let alone create it. But anyways, overall, not going to have much synergy within its own kingdom. But, of course, is still a really strong weapon. We were talking about it earlier, but, of course, gains a bunch of extra damage from its tempering level. Does a bunch of damage to the first 2 units. And it creates a billion green if your entire team is green. And even more so if your entire team is green while your enemy team is being green. This is going to be particularly good for green PvP. When, of course, that's basically what you have to do. Your pure team being green versus the enemy team pure being green. But it does still have use cases beyond that, depending on what your restrictions are. With that being said, even in Broken Spire, this might still be your best weapon or your best damage source. If you're missing everything else from Broken Spire and missing the Mythics, you know, when Broken Spire rolls back around, this could actually legitimately be your best overall damage output. So it does still have its use cases here and there, but it is probably one of the slightly less useful one of the 6 that we've gotten so far compared to them. And also his extra effect, I believe, is Entangle, which, not horrible, though compared to some of the other ones, not the greatest either, but there it is, the extra Entangle. So, you know, as many green weapons as get the free Entangle on top of it, which, not too bad. As far as event keys are concerned, it is Magrim Woods. With that being said, unless you're looking to get Magrim Woods to a certain star level, of which, like many kingdoms, is basically stuck at 26, even though it can go higher, it's just the deed books are holding it back, as per usual. But as far as Magrim Woods are concerned, if we go over to Magrim Woods, and double check the menu. I believe this is one of the ones that has one of the discontinued troops in a sense. If we go to, because isn't this one of the ones that has, is this where Ari is? No, I don't think so. No, it isn't. Never mind. Okay. I thought it was one of the Guild War troops, which of course, we haven't had Guild War in almost a year now. Actually, what is it now? 9 months? 8 months? It's a long time since we last had Guild War. Feels kind of weird not having it. But anyways, as far as the drop table is concerned, everything that is not in drop table includes the 4 faction troops from Hellgate. All 4 of those are not in drop table. Things that are also not in drop table include the tarot card, the moon. This you only get in vault keys. So of course we had a vault event not too long ago, and we have a vault event coming up soon. So any of those vault keys, you can get it from there. Aside from that, there's also the Scroll Reborn, specifically the boss variant. This one is crafted in Soulforge, and of course, oddly enough, the Celestial Dragon, of course, is from the Celestial Dragon eggs. So those 7 things are not in drop table. However, everything else that you see here is, if you want to pick any of them up. For the most part... Also, sorry. Hatter and Scroll and Hatter Ascendant are also not. Wait, don't they use... Wait, I'm actually confusing myself here now. But yeah, if I go check the Soulforge, weren't they both... Because Hatter Ascendant is... Yeah, the side one. And then there's Scroll Reborn. Oh, it was the one that's combined that's not in drop table. Wait, really? It's the combined one that is in drop table. That's so weird. That's really interesting. I completely forgot about that. But anyways, long story short, just don't open event keys. Anyways. That is so weird. I completely forgot about that. I don't understand why they split those things into 3. It never made any sense at the time. They are barely ever used. Every single one of them has like a weird gimmick going for it, mostly centered around lycanthropy gems. I guess the Doomskull one's kind of okay, but we already had other options at the time. I don't know. It was just always weird how those things were set up. It was around the time when they were starting to add like other boss troops, but they weren't doing it for power orbs, so they started doing it for like really weird resources. And those are in that category. But anyways, Tuesday we have ourselves the Hellgates. This is a brown-red restriction for Hellgate, of course. Wednesday we have ourselves the Pet Rescue for the Mergrim Woods pet. Thursday we have ourselves the Warden hero class. Warden's pretty underwhelming. It does have Dispel while having Green Storm, but that's pretty much the only thing it has going for it. There are a few niche teams that use it, like Truffle, quick spam teams and stuff like that. But for the most part, this hero class isn't really used. There's also a really unfortunate restriction, as Mergrim Woods, of course, is a combination of Beast and of War Gear. However, this hero class is specifically Beasts, and there is a rather limited pool of Beasts to really pull from as far as the Kingdom are concerned. It does have the 50% mana start for Beasts, but a lot of the other things that you have as options are not the greatest. And beyond that, we have ourselves, not Bounty Hunter, we have ourselves a new Deep Delve this Friday, where we're getting some new mech that tries to end up destroying itself. Which, not ideal. Actually, do I have it here? No, I don't think I have it showed here, but it has a, actually I might as well do it through here. Wait, well, we'll get it in the thing. Wait. I didn't open it, we'll do it here. But yeah, this thing's really weird. So, of course, this one's for Tinkertown, obviously. And a lot of things from Tinkertown have this, like, the self-destruct mechanic. So I guess it's not too odd, since this is a pretty common mechanic from this place. But as far as what he does, he pulls an enemy to the front and then deals half to magic times 1.25 plus 4 damage, aka less than 1-to-1, and overall just not going to be that good damage to them. And that's also boosted by his armor. This is interesting, but it's only 2-to-1. If this was 1-to-1 or even, 2 for... Oh, actually... Is it 2-to-1 or 1-to-2? 2-to-1. Oh, wait, maybe that is an okay amount of damage. Hold up. If that's every 2 armor is 1 damage, then that's not horrible, but also still so situational. Especially when you compare it to Rowan. Obviously, you can't use Rowan in like this kind of context if you're doing pure faction. But if you compare it to Rowan, if this is a 2-to-1 like Rowan, this is basically the same amount of damage, except you can waste your damage. Rowan distributes it everywhere. This does not. The other big downside, of course, is there is a 15% chance it self-destructs. This is not ideal. That means within about 7 attacks or so, give or take a little bit, you will go and, lose your troop. This is really bad for something that wants to gain a lot of armor, because you can't really go down the buff armor stat route like you can with Rowan, Tesla, some other things, Guard's Avatar. You can't go down that route because you're going to end up eventually self-destructing. What if you do it after like 1 or 2 attacks? then your main damage source just died. That is really, really bad. In the context of the faction, he might find his way in if you want to just have him as like one little damage poke. But beyond that, yeah, it's just not going to get used, unfortunately. It's an interesting premise, though, because it does get to pull them. Pulls an enemy to the front, so you can kind of reorder and stuff like that, but overall just isn't going to be worth it. And outside the context of the pure faction team, which you don't even necessarily need for it, you're just probably just not going to need it. Anyways, aside from that, other things, we got ourselves the good old Soul Forge. So with the Soul Forge, as far as troops are concerned, pretty much nothing worthwhile. I would say if you are going for any kind of troops, maybe Ferris Raw. Out of the 4 that are currently available right now, it is the only one that is kind of usable here and there. The main reason why he might be a little bit more usable in the very, very near future is, of course, we have the Soul Gem mechanic, and I haven't actually peeked at every single thing that we're getting by the end of the season, but from what I could tell, he's not going to get like a super good synergy coming in, unfortunately, through the Soul Gem mechanic. Similar to the Booty Gem that didn't really bring a better like gold farming team. This also, actually, that's not true. It brought in the Ruby weapon. So that's not completely true. If you only look at troops, it didn't really bring in a good option. Yeah, the Ruby weapon actually is really good for gold farming. But anyways, the Soul Gem hasn't really done the same in any way, weapon or troop, for souls. And if it was to do such a thing, of course, 150% soul gain is very beneficial, as soul gems and similar things, they have a static amount of soul gain that gets boosted by this. So, for example, all you would have to do is take 4 soul gems, 10 at a time, to reach your full cap. Even when it's raised, you still get the same proportional amount. So you end up getting it all the way scaled up by the 150%. So you would still only need 4 soul gems, even with a higher soul gem cap. And this is really good for things that have soul boost ratio, of course, not only himself, but things that are better than him, like the full AoE one from the faction and similar things. They end up having a way better overall damage ratio that they can end up using to actually utilize this mechanic. Overall, I would say soul gem mechanics aren't really used much in the current state of the game. If you're going to go like gold farming or soul farming is definitely a lot more popular with the Ruby weapon compared to this, which the Ruby weapon is still money locked at the moment, but I don't know, just doesn't as much of a need to soul farm these days. Obviously, when you're first starting out, this is still a pretty good early game mythic, but there's just so many better ways to farm souls these days, most notably getting yourself 3 Iron Hawks in order to quick farm, or even just 2 Iron Hawks in order to quick farm Vault events like we have in 2 weekends from now. Stuff like that just way outpaces the amount of benefit that you're going to get from like camping 10 hours at like a soul farming team for Ferris Raw. It's just not worth using him compared to just focusing on spending that time in a Vault event when it rolls around. So unfortunately, not as good as it used to be, but you know, as more soul mechanics come into the game, he will eventually be viable again. It really just comes down to, will he finally get like the perfect soul team synergy to really ramp up his amount of damage that he can supply. And as that currently stands, I would say the answer is no compared to current damage sources within the game. But, you know, that would eventually be yes. So if you want to get him preemptively for that, you can. But it doesn't seem like, at least not yet, that we're getting really a soul gem mechanic that's going to do it like the Ruby weapon did for gold with booty gems. But if we do, then we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, as far as weapons are considered in Soul Forge, nothing too noteworthy. I guess Doomed Glaive if you want to pick it up. This is definitely a week that you're pretty much just picking up weapons based on what you want for completionist sake. So if you want like Hope's Crescent for like a given game mode or something, or the Wolf Hammer, they're both pretty good if you're going to do something like that. Do just make sure not to get the Doomed, I still haven't tried saying this during this video, have I? The Doomed Fachad. I have no clue. The Doomed Fachad. But whatever this thing is called, do not get this in Soul Forge. You should get it for 500 gems within a Doomed event. It's just too much to get it through here, when you could just get it so cheaply through the event. If you're going to bother getting a Doom weapon through the thingy, it should definitely be Doomed Glaive, and just go from there. But anyways, beyond that, let's go into all the team. So, why am I going to PvP? I don't need PvP for this. I always do that because that's where I used to bring up the team's menu thingy. But anyways, Green Doom. Obviously, you have to use a pure green team. Also, you have to do the Doomed Fachad on your team, and this will give you double points as well whenever you kill the Doom. Technically, you could do the non-Doom fights without it, but realistically, you should just do it on all of them. So with this, pretty standard team for both. We're just doing a pretty standard Box Strider Leprechaun team. We have to use this, so we're just using a second slot. And then your third slot will be whatever your best damage source is. On the high end, this is Stellarix. On the low end, this is Beatrix. Beatrix is a legend, however, it is a faction legend, so it can always be targeted. So if you do not currently have the Beatrix, all you have to do is just throw some shards at the Deep Hive faction, You can end up getting this within a day, a couple days. If you don't have it, just do like the Tuesday faction event. The Tuesday faction event should give you plenty enough shards to end up getting a copy of this. And then boom, you have Queen Beatrix to use for the rest of the week. Really good overall true damager. Really decent extra turn rate. Not as good as Truffle, but relative to the damage output is pretty solid. And has one of the best cleanses in the entire game, be able to cleanse your entire team per extra turn, assuming it itself is not stunned. But yeah, we're just using Box Strider Leprechaun. And it's kind of team for the low rarity team. You could even potentially drop the Box Strider or drop the Leprechaun in place of a second Beatrix if you feel like one Beatrix isn't doing it for you as a damage source. And of course, if you want to upgrade from a Beatrix, just whatever your higher damage source is. But honestly, Beatrix should go a long while. It's basically either Stellarix or Beatrix. I guess maybe Diamantina if you have it, or something similar that's like really, really high damage. But honestly, Beatrix is going to be perfectly fine for a damage source. If you ever faced in PvP, you've seen it is plenty good enough for damage. Anyways, as far as the faction event this Tuesday, we have ourselves a brown-red restriction, though of course weapon is still allowed to be whatever you want. For this, we're just doing a quick kill Guards Avatar team for the lower range. And for the higher range, pretty standard hiking around against Zolgoth team. We're just doing with a wand for mana accumulation, and since we don't really have a good empower, though there are a few things we can empower with, but as far as like Explodium power, we're just going with a Harpy Mage and using that for our mana. As far as Pure Faction is concerned, we have to do it for Hellgate. This place actually has an interesting soul mechanic. So this thing gains a bunch of souls for each purple gem, and then explodes all the purple gems while having a higher soul cap. And this was the guy I was talking about a little bit earlier in that, like the full AoE soul troop. This is actually one of the better things in the entire game that utilizes the soul boost ratio. It deals a bunch of damage to all enemies, boosted by my souls at a 2-to-1. Oh, is that troop also only 2-to-1? Okay, never mind. That one faction troop is completely useless that we're getting on Friday then. But yeah, for every 2 souls, it does 1 additional damage to all enemies, which on this boost ratio is really good, because of course that means every single time that you're getting an extra boost, you're doing 1 additional damage to all enemies, which stacks up to be quite a lot. Even with no additional boost, you're getting 20 additional damage to all enemies once you reach max soul cap. And with this particular team, we will be hitting 30, as this guy gives 50% extra souls. And of course, in situations where you use Ferrous Rod and such, you can go even higher. However, of course, for a pure faction team, you cannot do that. Just in theory, if you were to do it for such a thing. But as far as Pure Faction is concerned, yeah, you just use this for mana accumulation, then just spam Judge of the Dead. You can even go for Judge of the Dead if you really wanted to, but this is more so just to make sure you get your souls going just a little bit quicker, as he does have a way to gain souls, but it's not as quick as just cast this like once or twice, get all your mana, and go from there. As far as the Warden class event, this one's a little bit clunky. You have to use a pure beast team. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Magrum Woods is a pretty weird mix of both beasts and war gear. And for this reason, you just don't have as many options to really end up utilizing. So we're just kind of doing a triple link into a black manacle. There are some empowers you can end up using, either the Spirit Fox for true damage or the Aneri for the blue mana accumulation. And you could do that if you want, if you have Dawnbringer, if you just want to go down the Spirit Fox route for chip damage. But I'm just going down the all-in black manacle route. Next, we have ourselves Underspire. And as far as Underspire is concerned, it is a little clunky this week if you don't have the higher rarity options. We've actually gotten a new higher rarity option. Of course, we do have the Celestial Dragon, which is going to be one of your best options, actually the best option for damage, if you happen to have it. However, if you don't, the somewhat recently added Midwinter Lincoln, I think I mentioned this when he came out as well, in that, hey, this will be useful if we ever have a Magrim's event, or Magrim's Wood event. We're restricted to have to use that kind of stuff. And guess what? Here we are. So he has 20% extra stats this week. He deals a bunch of damage to all enemies, and he creates a mix of Cursed Gems and Freeze Gems. His biggest issue is his extra turn rate is not that great. However, he can extra turn, and the fact that he can do this while also doing all the free freezes and terrors is pretty decent. In most part, you're kind of want to go to use him as a finisher option, just to let your Lunarian do all of your damage. You can even double up on Lunarian and go 2 if you happen to have 2. However, I'm just offsetting it with this to get a little bit of mix of both, and to get the free terrors, which might end up securing a free kill. And we just use this for a little bit of mana accumulation and poke down whatever the biggest threat is. And then Aneri is just here for the Empower into blue. Though if we find this becomes too annoying because of the mana drain, we could, of course, just switch it out for any other amount of mana accumulation, and we should be good to go. That's pretty much the game plan there. As far as the lower rarity team, it might look a little similar because it's basically the faction team. And the main reason for this is, hey, it works. We're just using hero here to tank because, of course, for whatever reason, you're not allowed to use even the faction weapon or any hero weapon in the context of factions. Otherwise, you could probably just solo every faction with just hero, with how many barriers on brown and everything you get, which is probably the reason why they're not, but it also makes kind of faction weapons kind of clunky. But anyways, in this make game mode, you can. So that's exactly what we're doing. Since all this is Magrim Woods, we're using the Magrim's Woods Hope Crescent, which of course, while I normally would consider this a high rarity since it's one of the past event weeks, this is a Magrim's Woods weapon, so you can end up getting it through the Soul Forge this week if you currently don't have it. And of course, similar to Beatrix, if you don't currently have the rest of this team, all you have to do is throw a bunch of Chaos Shards at Hellgate faction, and you will eventually get both the Coronis and the Double Judge of the Dead. And then it's pretty similar to how you would run the Pure Faction team. You just throw this until you get all your mana, you keep chipping them down with Judge of the Dead, and you use this just to get rid of what the biggest threat is, aka most likely whatever the boss troop is. So once you get to the dragon fights, you just use this on that, or any big threat that might be in a given fight, and you just use that in order to kill them out. And of course, all these teams will be in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. Anyways, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. We'll be going over and messing around with Tower of Doom and everything else later tonight, as we do every single night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We end up doing the stream. And beyond that, of course, we'll be going over the Mythic video this Friday, when we end up getting the new Deep Delve, but also more importantly, the new Mythic. And honestly, it seems like it has some potential, so really curious to see how it works. It seems like a more modernized version of Apothecary while having a few of the gimmicks, so be interesting to see how that works. And yeah, mess around, build a bunch of teams, and see what we can ultimately end up doing. Thank you everyone for watching. Feel free to leave a like on the video, helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone.